Tuko Imbuko, karibuni sana. It's mid-morning. Yeah, it's 9:54 a.m. in this beautiful corner of South Kajiado. As you can tell, we've had a few dumpings of rain. You can tell from the muddy puddles on the side of this Maram road. Although I have been told that for whatever reason, this side of Kajiado South has only started receiving rainfall, whereas the side closer to Emali has received a lot more rainfall. And you can tell as you drive down because it's a lot greener on that side. But we thank God at least they've gotten a few sprinkles here and there, and hopefully it increases before the rainy season is over. But the reason I'm excited to show you where we're at is because Imbuko returned. So we're standing right on the side of the access road that runs along what will be Imbuko 5, which will be 1 acre parcels of land that we're going to be offering on a pre-sale basis, because 50 acres as a mother parcel is relatively small, because after accounting for access roads in any public utility size like for the garden, we may have only 45 1 acre parcels to sell to you. So I just want to give you guys a sneak peek of what Imbuko 5 looks like before we do any of the marraming of the access roads and so on. It's very close to Imbuko 4. As you recall, 5 acre blocks which sold out really quick, which also sold right after Imbuko 3, which were 1 acre parcels. If you're interested, reach out to us ASAP 0700010001. Again, that's 0700010001. Someone on WhatsApp can respond to you. You can also check out our website, send us an email, and we'll be happy to engage with you as soon as possible.
Get your 1 acre lot at only 1.19 million today.
Hola, good evening. Hope you're doing well. This is Solomon Wangwe, founder, managing director of Goshen Acquisitions and its wholly owned subsidiary, Grand Acres Limited. Good evening to you all. Miss Musao, good evening to you. I see you. Thank you for tuning in. Frank G. Mwenda, Ahadi Group, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Mini Mudhoni, I see you. Thank you. Kiongoji, Dr. Jim, Karibu. It's now 7:03 p.m. in Nairobi, Kenya. In case you're not in Kenya and you're tuning in to this live event, please just let us know what city you're in. We love to know where everyone is at. Speak Swahili today, tuned in from Mombasa. Karibu, thank you so much. I see you tuned in on YouTube. So grateful for this opportunity. So just housekeeping before we get started. Occasionally you will notice that I will be changing my focus from left to right. That's because I am facing two phones at the moment. One is streaming live on Instagram. The other is on a platform called StreamYard, which allows us to stream on multiple platforms at the same time. So for those of you on Instagram, from time to time, depending on what I'm talking about, the team, I have a whole team behind me, or I should say in front of me in another room, that's helping me get this done. They will play videos, show images, and so on as examples of what I'm talking about. Those will only be viewed if you're on YouTube and the other platforms, Facebook, because of StreamYard. If you're on Instagram, you would not see that. I'm sorry. For some reason, Instagram is not yet I should say maybe it doesn't have the plugins for StreamYard. So please excuse that. But other than that, we're excited about today. It's an open session, question and answers. If you have any questions, pressing questions, comments, even if you don't have a question, you have a comment, you have a critique, a criticism to make, whether about ourselves, our products, our offerings, or anything else around real estate in Kenya, please feel free to share. We don't mind compliments. But today's session is supposed to be free and open. So send your questions in and we'll go through them one after the other for the next 55 minutes from now. And as always, let's keep it respectful and all will be fine. Okay, so Daniel A, live and direct from California. what's up to you too? Thank you so much for tuning in, Daniel. That's awesome. What time is it in LA? So you guys are like 11 hours behind or something. Mr. Wholesome Lifestyle, or My Wholesome Lifestyle, sorry, tuning in from Germany. Welcome. Thank you so much. You're on YouTube. Jones, Nyawa, Mjumbe, thank you for tuning in. Beckham Karaoke, Karibu, honored. So let's get started, guys. If you can queue up any questions as they come in, I'll wait maybe a few seconds, a minute. If we have any other older questions, maybe from last week that we didn't address, we can start with those as everyone gets their brains warmed up. So send in your questions and I'll be happy to answer. As you do that, let me just start by saying that we are not licensed advocates, we are not financial advisors, we are not surveyors or registered planners. So any advice I'm going to give you is going to be coming out of my experience, personal experience, buying and selling land in Kenya as a principal, meaning the person who's actually risking capital, taking possession and ownership, registered ownership of land, and reselling to others. By virtue of that, we have a ton of experience. It's been 11 and a half years now since we founded Goshen Acquisitions. And for those of you who might not know, because maybe I am a new face to you, I used to buy and sell real estate in the US before I came back home. I happened to be an ex-diasporan, went to school in the US, Savannah, Georgia to be exact, and was out there for 11 years in total, during which I think about 5 years of those I did practice real estate, again, as a principal, not as an agent or a broker. We bought and sold land as principals. So quite a bit of experience. If you add up the years, it comes to about 16 and a half, almost 17 years in real estate. And so it's from that perspective, I will be sharing my opinions, my comments, my advice to you. As always work with licensed professionals, double check, read up on your own, do your own due diligence. But we are here to serve you, which is why we do these weekly live events. So let's get it rocking. It's now 7:08 p.m. I'll start with Ahadi Group as always. You guys win the award as always. Most consistent participants. Hi, Solomon. Some time back, you mentioned that you are in a board that is working on making realtors have something like a DRE, just like in the US. Any update on that? Thank you, Ahadi. Yes, I happen to be currently chairman of a real estate practitioners association, real estate development and finance association, I should say. We are still in the process of getting registered by the Registrar of Societies in Kenya. Again, we do everything right. And I am one of many stakeholders in the business, many of whom are developers of built environment, meaning apartments, homes, commercial spaces, as well as others in the land space, just like we are. And so that is still ongoing until we are duly registered. There's very little we can do authoritatively anyway, but lots of consultations ongoing, drafting of policies, assessments of what's going on in the local environment so that we have meaningful and relevant engagement. So as soon as that's up and running, I'll give you guys an update, but thank you for that question, Ahadi. Let's see, what else do we have here? From Speak Swahili today. Your question is, has the new finance bill, I suppose, taking effect from Saturday affected land and real estate prices in general? Anything we should expect in this regard? The answer is no, in my view, no effect. We haven't registered any effect anyway. I suppose it's too early for anyone to tell, but the finance bill had a raft of amendments to and proposals on fresh proposals on taxation thresholds for all manner of things. none of which has affected our particular space. Obviously, one can project that with increased taxes, overall, there's less money in the normal Monanchi's pockets to spend and invest on a macro basis. Again, it's still too early to tell. I think the most relevant one to real estate is this new 3% housing fund contribution that's supposed to be docked from everyone's income. If you're earning, if you're employed in Kenya, in addition to your income tax, pay as you earn, National Social Security Fund, National Hospital Insurance Fund contributions, we are now required to give up an extra 3% to the national, I guess you call it a national housing fund. And the idea is that the government will use the collected funds to support development of affordable housing all over the country because they want to provide quality, affordable housing for the masses in Kenya, which is a noble thing, I have to say. A lot of controversy about exactly how it should be done. Many feel that this is not the right way to go about it. Obviously, the parliament felt differently. Hence, our president, His Excellency William Ruto, assenting to the bill last week, as you allude. And again, still too early. We haven't even gone through a 30-day cycle to see what impact that will have on people's pockets. So it's a wait and see situation. Awesome question. We're all waiting with bated breath to see. So next question, if we may. 5 minutes. That's an interesting handle. 5 minutes. Your question reads, when paying stamp duty for land, where do you get the bill reference number required on the iTax payment registration page? Bill reference number. Okay. When you're paying for stamp duty, presumably you have had your property valued. The government valuation officer has to ascribe a value against which the stamp duty percentage is assessed. And that's going to be either 4% of that value or 2%. And it's 4% for leasehold and it's 4% for freehold. Now, once you've done that, you will process a payment slip on the KRA iTax platform. And that payment slip will have the bill reference number that you're referring to. They tend to be very long. They're usually located on the top right corner of the payment slip. And you will make your payment or using whatever options that they list. You can use direct bank transfer because every bank is registered with KRA for these payments. Most banks on their platforms, like we do with KCB, will have a tab for tax payments. You enter the reference number that's imprinted on your payment slip that you process through the iTax platform, and it immediately makes a payment to Kenya Revenue Authority, I suppose directly through their KCB account. A lot of advocates, however, we've experienced prefer that we make the payments in cash at the teller and get a payment slip, a physical payment slip, that is then provided to the registrar when you're submitting your documents for transfer of property. Supposedly that is preferred because when you make the payment electronically, it doesn't generate a receipt as you might expect if you make a physical payment at the teller. Nevertheless, the payment is registered either way. It just, for some reason, our advocates seem to prefer that we obtain physical payment receipts from the teller because it hastens the process. So there you go, 5 minutes. All success to you as you make your stamp duty payments. Okay, Glittering Angel. Man, who comes up with these handles, man? I think I need help with mine. Mine are so boring. Glittering Angel. Hi, Solomon. My husband and I found your channel this week and we have binged it like a series. Awesome. Thank you, Glittering Angel, for that kind compliment. And you end with great content. We found you because we are trying to buy land at a good price here in Kenya. Okay, we've been looking for land in what you call the satellite town. What would you advise? Does that question have another part to it? Gladys in the back. We've been looking for land in what you call the satellite towns. What would you advise? Okay, so if that's the end of the question, I think I get the gist of it. My advice, as always, is first of all, go to the Grand Acres website. Be kind to yourself. Make it easy. Go to www.grandacres.co.ke. Why? Because on our website there's a tab for the Grand Acres checklist. It's a free resource that's available to anyone out there looking for a guided process. Again, based off of over a decade of experience doing this back here in Kenya, on the 9 steps to safe land buying or property buying in Kenya. We tend to focus our attention on land because that's what we do. We are land developers. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you should be able to see an example of what the checklist looks like. It's absolutely free, so download it for yourself. It's gonna share step 1 to step 9. Obviously, you have an idea what you want to buy the land for in these satellite towns, which is define your investment goal. Number 2, you have to scout for the land. Obviously, you have to look around to find what works best for you. Step number 3 is how to meet the seller. And each one of these steps has a description associated with it on subsequent pages on that checklist. What to ask the seller for when you do meet with them. Confirming the seller's identity, exactly what you should ask for. Step number 5 is negotiation. Step number 6 is hire a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya to help you. Very important, because it's at this point that you're going to need legal documents drawn up for you. They have to be drafted in compliance to what Law Society of Kenya calls the conditions of sale. These are a bunch of I guess you call them clauses of our laws that have to do with addressing the interests of any party involved in a land transaction. So conditions of sale, only a licensed advocate would be familiar with what those are properly. So hence our insistence that you work with a licensed advocate. Has to be a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And what to ask them for, they have to show you their license renewed. It has to be current for this year, otherwise walk away. There's a reason why Law Society of Kenya requires them to renew their license on an annual basis. All those steps are listed in your checklist, including step number 7, how to sign the sale agreement, what your sale agreement should contain in it, particularly the completion documents, which are also part of step number 9. And then step number 8, how to make your payments. We insist that you always use an escrow account, if not for the full payment of your property purchase, at the very least for your final one. Okay? Never pay fully until all the terms and conditions in your mutually ratified sale agreement have been met. Before a seller can do that comfortably, they need to be sure that you are ready to complete. So rather than giving them the funds before you are also sure that they've met every condition, have the funds sitting in an escrow account so that if anything goes sideways, you can always pull out and at least recover some of your funds, if not all of them. Hence the importance of using an escrow account. Okay, so that's the first thing I'd advise you to do. Get your checklist, and you'll be able to go through the full sequence fairly easily. Okay, without knowing any of the details as far as what you're looking for, I wouldn't be able to go beyond that. So if there's something specific you want me to to touch on, please share, and maybe we can touch on that before we're done with this live event. And Digital Trends Kenya, you're saying hello, Solomon. Hello back to you. Watching from Nairobi. What is a good size of land to buy in Nanyuki? I'm looking to build a home to settle there. Most in market are 50 by 100s. Okay, that's a great question, Digital Trends Kenya. 50 by 100s, for just for the record, is 1/8 of an acre. So 8 of those will comprise an acre. Okay, just to give you a reference in terms of size. It's true, everyone and their grandma or their shosho is selling land in Nanyuki as 50 by 100s. I'm really not sure why that is, other than it brings the cost of the land lower because you're subdividing the piece of land multiple times, and it's pocket friendly for most investors, particularly speculative investors in Kenya. And there's positives and negatives about that. I've spoken extensively about this issue, and in my personal opinion, I would never touch a 50 by 100 in general. The only time I would is if it meets a very specific set of conditions, starting with change of use for the appropriate user or zoning for that size of land, and provision of utilities like power, water, access roads, security, and more important than all those is waste treatment. Where is all your waste going? If I subdivide a 10-acre block into 50 by 100s, I'll end up with maybe 75 of them, or 70 at the least. So I've just introduced 70 new households, potential households, to a 10-acre block that likely had a single household. Where is all that waste going? If we assume that an average household in Kenya is comprised of 4 individuals, parents and two kids, very easily you're looking at 280 people, all of whom are taking showers every day, washing dishes, flushing toilets. Where is all that waste going? So, under very specific circumstances and utility provision, would I even consider 50 by 100? Because even if it had all those provided, I have an issue with the size. It's a very small space. There's very little you can do other than for commercial use in terms of maximizing the space. Even for residential, there is a place for that. There is a market for that, obviously. No one is disputing that, but it needs to be zoned right and it has to have the utility. So, as far as what is a good size of land to buy in Nanyuki, it really depends on your budget. To be honest, we typically have only sold, I should say, mostly sold half acres since 2012. We've bought and sold hundreds of acres of land in Nanyuki in the last 10 years, 10 and a half years, 11 years now, actually. And the smallest we have ever sold has been half an acre. Why? Because it doesn't even feel right to sell anything smaller. Most of Nanyuki is undeveloped unless you're in Nanyuki town itself. Laikipia County is comprised of 1.2 million acres of land. Most of it sits westward or northwest towards Nyahururu. And so there's a lot of land. 1.2 million acres of land is a lot of space. What on earth are you going to do with a 50 by 100 in the middle of nowhere with no utilities? That's a question that people need to answer. That's a question I ask myself. And so I would advise you strongly to think about those, even when you're deciding what size. But predominantly, issue of size boils down to how much money or how much capital you have available to spend. And if you're on Facebook and what's the other one?
Instagram?
Facebook, no, not Instagram. Facebook. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, my team is playing an ad for our Acacia Cove project, which are half-acre lots. Again, smallest we've ever sold. We've done 1 acres before, and they sold out so fast, my head spun. This was in 2016, 2017, into 2018. But mostly we sell half acres because we have to strike a very delicate balance between absorbing the cost of infrastructure provision versus providing decent space for the use versus the environment and what is suitable for the ambience there. The last thing I want to feel if I'm going to buy land in Anyuki to build a home, presumably it's a secondary home, it's not a primary home, meaning I'm using it on weekends or public holidays or other festive holidays as a weekend getaway, potentially a future retirement home. The last thing I want to feel is as if I'm back in Nairobi in a densely populated area like South B or South C or Buruburu and so on. I want to decompress. Otherwise, what's the point? Right? So my recommendation, if you were to press me for a minimum size, it's going to be half an acre because that's what we have provided all our customers for all these years. And it seems to work well. If you can afford more, even better, right? Because that gives you flexibility on what else to do on your land besides build your home. So shop around, ask questions, ask critical questions about value addition, what utilities you're going to get. Do you have access to clean potable water? Do you have access to power? What's the security situation like? And more importantly, besides access, do you have waste treatment? Very important. Cool. Thank you for that question. Glittering Angel. This is a continuation of your question. Thanks, Solo. The question here is, with about 3 million, we are looking for land which is for residential use. Number one, you say Imbuko is for strategic investment. Are there already people living on the land? Number two, where would you advise that we look, given that it's so frustrating to find something that won't depreciate? Great questions, Glittering Angel. So let me start with Imbuko. As far as your question is concerned, Imbuko is a settled area. And if you're curious about more details, please just go to our website, www.grandacres.co.ke, and find the information on Imbuko, or you can send a WhatsApp message to 0700010001. Again, that's 0700010001, and someone will send you more details. These are 1 acre parcels of land, currently going for only 1.19 million shillings each. And these will come with all-weather access Maram Road for accessibility, connectivity to power, which we will have to pull to the site. There's fresh drinking potable water available along the Kilimanjaro pipeline, right along the access road, just a few meters from our site. Security is great in this area because the average landowner in Imbuko is sitting on about 400 to 500 acres. So you might not see them. It may seem like it's not a settled area. Maybe that's why you're asking the question, but Imbuko is fully owned predominantly by the Maasai community members because this is their ancestral lands, and these are who we have been buying land from since 2012. And as far as our customers are concerned, none of our customers has built to live there yet. We have a number who are currently processing their building permits to build their weekend getaway cottages and so on. Some have started to fence, and we're looking forward to people settling on the site. But it's no surprise to us that even after selling land out there for all this time, no one has built or is living there because most land in Kenya is sold to speculators. That is a terminology used by the finance and banking community here in Kenya to mean people who are buying mostly as a savings strategy, long-term savings, capital growth, capital gain strategy. They're not buying to live or settle there. Most land in Kenya is owned, in places like these, are owned by what are classified as absentee landowners, meaning they own the land, but they don't live there, they don't dwell there. They might use it for farming, but for the most part, it sits unsettled, undeveloped, untouched until such a time as makes sense for people to do so. And that mostly has to do with utilities, security, and other supporting amenities like schools, shopping centers, hospitals, and the likes. So that's the situation in Imbuko, which is why we do talk about it in the way that we do. And as far as your second question is concerned, about where I would advise, I mean, depends on whether or not you're looking to settle there immediately. If you're looking to build something that you can live on immediately, places like Imbuko may not be the easiest locations to do so, because it's going to cost you a little bit more to build, because you have to think about how you're going to access water for construction up until the time that we are done with utilities into the site. You're going to have to think about security. Um, and, quite frankly, it's nowhere near the basic amenities one might require for daily living. So if you have young kids, where are they going to go to school? You might not want them going to the local government school in Imbuko. You might prefer that they have a different experience. So therefore, where do they go to school? If you need constant medical care, are you comfortable with going to Merueshi Medical Clinic down the road, or do you prefer more specialized services? So all these things have to be thought about very critically. And then once you're clear about what location makes sense for the purpose that you need the land, then it's simply a question of finding land that's within your budget, that you're happy to make the decision about. And of course, after you do that, it's a matter of making sure your due diligence checks out, the documents are okay, the provenance of ownership is clear, it's not murky, and you don't run the risk of losing your land at some undefined point in the future because one thing or the other was skipped along the way. So many things to consider. So, my recommendation is, obviously, you guys seem to have given some thought about buying in the first place. I mean, you've saved up and put aside a bunch of capital to do so. That tells me you're serious, obviously. But as far as where, would largely depend on how quickly you want to utilize the space for the purpose you're dreaming of using it for, and is it within your budget? And if you have any other questions that maybe might clarify further, happy to address that either now during the call, or you can just send us a WhatsApp, 0700010001. Share your number, and happy to even have a full conversation with you if that's helpful. Okay. Next question. Hey, there's our other friend, Kennedy Odhiambo. Thank you so much, as always, all week. You and the Hardy group need to be on the same WhatsApp group, man. You guys are so consistent. Thank you. I look forward to these live events because of Kennedy and Ahadi group. And Washu has dissed us for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I know she's busy, probably working the late shift. We miss you, Washu. Please let us know that you're okay. But Kennedy says, as dicey as it is in any developing country like Kenya, do you think we are inching towards proper regulations on real estate crowdfunding? Yes, I think that is definitely happening. It's inevitable. There's no other way to go about it, because cost of land is outpacing earning capacity in Kenya. That's just a fact. And I'm not sure why that is, to be honest, because if you're going to rely on free market dynamics, the cost of land should be reflective of spending power or ability to generate income, okay? Disposable income specifically. In Kenya, they never seem to be synchronized, right? It's always super expensive in general. Even with Imbuko at 1.19, a lot of people feel like, I wish it could be cheaper. And so it's inevitable that crowdfunding solutions policies around how to regulate that, because it's a sensitive issue. It's been tried before by entities through the Capital Markets Authority and the Nairobi Stock Exchange, obviously, investment funds, real estate funds, and that sort of thing. But we've had issues. Our market is relatively young as far as matured policies are concerned relative to the West, where this is the norm, or Europe, or even compared to South Africa. Issues like entities like real estate investment trusts are really struggling to take off here because policies have to be specific to the local conditions as opposed to importing templates from elsewhere. So we have a ways to go, but things are definitely changing and inching towards the proper regulations, as you put it, Kennedy. That's an awesome question, and I personally am looking forward to that happening. I am trusting that Kenya, as always, will be a pace setter as far as this is concerned for the region. We tend to adopt good policies fairly quickly, faster than the matured societies have taken to develop. And so I'm hopeful that will happen imminently. So it's a wait and see situation. Thank you for that, Kennedy. Okay, Bench, also Beckham Karaoke on Instagram. Hi, Beckham. Do you face any challenges at the registries when pursuing such certificates? Yes, plainly put. Standard operating procedure in Kenya, everything is challenging, right? You're dealing with government offices. So as you know, searches are supposed to be free, thanks to our previous president, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And the point was to ease or lower cost of doing business, ease of doing business, improve the ease of doing business in Kenya. Very noble. Introduce challenges along with it, especially with matters to do with proving that you have followed due process, because now I don't need a receipt to prove that I've done a search properly. I just requisition one and it's given to me when it's given to me. One of the things that did, and I'm not sure it was inadvertent, because the people in government understand how government works. They understand the complexities and the difficulties of service delivery. Okay, so this is just my opinion, having to deal with this particular office practically on a daily basis. One of the problems that was a result of the doing away of search fees in Kenya was that now the officers in the registries really don't have avenues of diverting funds. When you pay for a search fee, you're supposed to pay the cash office. At least that's how it used to be. But a lot of times, most of the times, people wouldn't pay the cash office. They would simply pay the clerk, who would put it in their pocket, and a search would be produced. So what that means is service was provided, but the government was not generating any revenue. Okay, it was enriching the clerks in the registry. I mean, this is how stuff works in Kenya. It's not a secret, and we have to talk about it openly. Otherwise, we can't find solutions. So, in that instance, when the government did away with the fees, all of a sudden that cash cow dried up. So what that means is they have to force you to pay them if you want the service done quickly, or you just have the patience and consistency to bug them until they provide you the service that the government is supposed to provide you. So this is the main challenge. Yes, particularly in RD House, for the last year or two, we've had issues of registry shutdowns for one reason or the other, whether it's digitization, whether it's regime change, all manner of issues around the RD House, the headquarters in Nairobi. So even doing searches have become difficult. So par for the course, it's a reality. You just have to do it. You can't skip that step. You have to do it as part of your due diligence. So this is one of the main reasons I always recommend to people, when you're identifying a licensed advocate to work with, make sure that they are a conveyancing specialist. What that means is they are an advocate who deals with commercial real estate transactions predominantly. And so they are familiar with how to go around dealing with the registries. Very often they have personal or strong relationships with specific people in the registries who will give attention to their work more than they would a random stranger showing up. They would have a clerk whose singular job is to sit on the bench at the registry, pestering the clerks and the registrars to release documents, right? If you don't do that, then you're not top of mind. They'll tell you come back in a week. You come back in a week, they forgot about it. It got piled under a bunch of other things that have more urgency, and then they tell you to come back a week later. So if you're going to work with a licensed advocate, make sure you work with one who specializes in conveyancing, because they simply have the infrastructure internally to do it a lot more efficiently. Okay, I hope that helps. And all success to you, Beckham Karaoke. Next one. My wholesome lifestyle. Can you please expand on special board, and would you recommend it? Thank you, my wholesome lifestyle, for that question. We actually had the same question last week. I don't know if you watched the recording of last week's live session. We always post these probably the day after or sometimes the same day, so people can watch who weren't able to join the weekly sessions. And the answer is there is no special board. There is no such thing as a special board. It's a complete illegality born out of corrupt greed. There is only special land control boards, LCBs. They are scheduled for a year in advance. The land control board in each jurisdiction will post on a public notice board the dates of every land board sitting or hearing for every month for a year up until the end of the year. So there's no guesswork about when they're going to sit, because they have to generate reports. They get sitting allowances for showing up, leaving their daily duties to come in and sit at the board. In most cases, the land boards meet every month, once a month. In some cases, the very busy areas, they'll meet more than once, maybe twice. I actually saw one where they met 3 times a month, just because of how busy it is. So there is only that land control board. You have to book in advance. You have to fill an application form to the land control board stating the specific consent or permission that you are applying for. A licensed advocate will prepare that for you adequately. There's a very specific template to use. The wording also has to be efficient. Otherwise, it gets messy and you have ambiguous consents or hearings for them to consider. You have to pay a fee. Unfortunately, that service has not been made free yet. So there's a fee. Usually it's 1,000 shillings. You have to pay at the cash office, or your advocate will actually pay when they send their clerk to make the booking. You pay the Ministry of Lands cash office. They issue a receipt along with a duplicate. They would remain with a triplicate for their own record at the cash office. You then attach your duplicate to your application and submit it to the secretary or the clerk who does the bookings for the land control board hearing that's coming up. In most cases, in our experience, they require that you make your booking at least 7 business days in advance of the land board hearing. Reason for that is they need time to compile the list of all applications and put them on a schedule, because very often on the day of the hearing, they will call you into the room. It's supposed to be done on a sequential basis, first come, first serve. Doesn't always happen that way, because some random guy will come and bribe someone to skip the line. But at the very least, you have been listed in advance. During the hearing, they take minutes and your matter will be heard if you show up. If you don't show up, they will say you didn't show up, or it got deferred to the next one for one reason or the other, or that they issued the approval, and you get your letter of consent. Okay? That is how it happens. There is no such thing as special board. It's a terminology that was coined way back when because people got impatient. Sometimes there's real pressure when people are selling, either to pay hospital bills, pay for school fees. There's a wedding coming up. Someone has died. Someone wants to con someone before other people find out, particularly when members of a family want to sell a property from underneath their family members' feet without them knowing. All manner of reasons will create urgency for people to sell land. And if the land board only meets once a month, for instance, for Imbuko, next week we are attending the land control board hearing that was supposed to be for June. It was scheduled for June the 28th, which was yesterday. I was supposed to be in Mashuru, which is a sub-county office for Kajiado County, to attend the land board hearing, which we booked for a number of transfers to our Imbuko 5 and Kili Point customers. And unfortunately, yesterday happened to be a public holiday, was gazetted on Monday, so it was a complete surprise. So the land board was postponed to the 5th of July, and this is a land board hearing for June, okay, because they only meet once a month. And because the one for July has already been set, it was set in January, just like every other month for that year. So because they don't want to inconvenience people who perhaps are waiting for bank approvals, some banks need to register charges or register discharges of loans, all manner of reasons for land board hearings. And just for the record, if you're going to deal with agricultural land, everything requires land control board approval. Everything. If it's agricultural, there's no escaping land control boards. From subdivisions to combinations to transfers to registering cautions or caveats or liens by banks or discharging them or getting approval to facilitate inheritance because of a succession issue. Everything requires land control board approval. So it's busy. And because they don't want to inconvenience people who were caught off guard by this surprise public holiday in Kenya yesterday, we all have now to wait until the 5th of July. And because of that dynamic, you can imagine if someone was expecting to get the consent yesterday, which was going to unlock funds from a buyer, say tomorrow by end of week, and then all of a sudden we have to wait an extra week, there's real pressures people face. So because of that situation, a lot of people, including those at the land control boards, created this special board thing where they'll tell you the usual fee is 1,000 bob. If you give us 5,000 shillings, which obviously you will not be paying to the cash office, you pay the guys, they share the take amongst themselves, they issue the consent letter for your application, and they will normally backdate it to the last formal hearing. Why? Because you don't want to wait for the next formal one. You just don't have time, or you're impatient, or whatever. You don't care about due process. They will backdate it to the last formal hearing. You don't have a cash office receipt because you didn't pay the cash office. And even if you did pay the cash office, they can't issue a receipt that is dated later than the actual hearing because they have to backdate it to the last formal hearing. And then because of that, you're not listed in the minutes. All sorts of problems come along with special board approvals. It's a complete illegality. In actual fact, about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the Ministry of Lands Cabinet Secretary, I believe it was Honorable CS Farida Karone, if my memory serves me right, or the previous one, issued a memo countrywide that was blasted and plastered on every public notice board at the Ministry of Lands registry offices, clearly stating that there is no such thing as a special board. Okay, so anyone who tells you that you don't have to wait for the normal hearing, that you can go to the special board, is either lying to you or is completely ignorant of what the due process requires. In either case, walk away or force them to work with the due process. There is no gain that's worth the stress you're going to experience, wondering if someone's going to be auditing the books at the registry at some point to investigate whether due process was followed or not, because in the most extreme cases, your ownership can be revoked. the title deed can be revoked. So it's not worth it. And more importantly than that, it's just immoral. So do the right thing, work with normal boards, avoid anything labeled special board. And obviously, I would not recommend it. Okay, so I hope that helps and is as clear as possible. Uh, yeah, uh, you were told that special board will be 10K. There you go. It's only 1,000 shillings for a board hearing, right? So you pay for 10 land board hearings by paying 10K. That money will not go to the government as it's supposed to. It will be shared by the individuals who constitute the land board, and they will backdate your consent. You will not be listed in the minutes, and your ownership could be subject to challenge at some point. Why deal with that? Just do the right thing, have peace, have unimpeachable ownership because you can prove you followed due process. Okay? All the best to you, my wholesome lifestyle. Mark Gasheru, Bwana Wangwe, where a county advertises they have a waiver, what exactly is being waived? Is it the penalties accrued? Is it the amount? That's a great question, Mark. And you continue by saying, kindly highlight for us taxes levied for maintaining a parcel of land. I've heard this property tax. Is it paid by year like other taxes? Great question. So when a county advertises for waivers, what they're trying to do is encourage people who have defaulted on their tax payment, their annual taxes, which for counties are called rates. Rates, that's RATES. The one paid to the national government is called rent, RENT. Okay, so for counties, it's rates. When people don't pay their rates on time, it's supposed to be done once a year. The county government, in an effort to encourage people to pay uncollected taxes, will waive the penalties that have accrued from being late, because the penalties accrue on a monthly basis. It's an interest, and upon interest, upon it can get crazy, which could lead to auction situations in the most extreme cases. And so, in an effort to forestall that expensive exercise, also because it takes a lot of effort in terms of manpower and resources to track who has paid, who hasn't paid, how much do they owe, how do we collect it from them, do we auction, blah, blah, blah. The counties will waive the accrued penalties and interests to encourage people to make the payment that they should have. And it's a great time to take advantage of that, because when they're not advertising, they will levy the penalties against you. So if you ever find yourself sort of having forgotten to pay your tax and the county is waiving the penalties, then take advantage and make it due, okay? Because if you don't, you will not be able to get a clearance certificate for that year. And in the event that you get into a situation that requires that you sell the property or borrow against the property, the bank that's going to be lending you money or the seller who's going to be purchasing from you will require a clearance certificate, a tax clearance certificate for your rates and your rents, if applicable, before they can conclude the transaction. Okay, so just be up to date with it on an annual basis. It's usually not much money. Just do it right and have peace. And as far as what other property taxes there are for maintaining a parcel of land during the tenure of your ownership, it's rates and rents. Rates to the county, rent to the national government. Freehold property is usually not subject to rent to the national government. The national government does not charge any taxes for freehold land. In fact, the whole point of freehold is that you have a free ownership forever. So the government does not charge you tax. Counties are not supposed to be charging taxes on freehold land either, but in Kenya today, counties do have the leeway to levy rates on freehold land. I've seen that happen. I'm not sure exactly what technicality has allowed for that to exist given the freehold status, but it does happen. And you can easily find out by going to the county offices, providing them the land registry number or the land reference number, and they can quickly tell you if there's any taxes owed or rates owed onto it. For leasehold property, you will pay both rates to the county and rent to the national government. And these are primarily the taxes that you would have to take care of on an annual basis. You pay it once a year, usually at the end of the year or in the first quarter of the next year. If you want a tax clearance certificate for the previous year, you have to pay. And as I've just said, you want to make sure that you're current, because if you do find yourself in a situation where you want to leverage your ownership of the property by borrowing against it, or someone made you an offer you just couldn't turn down because it was too good to say no to, you're going to need a tax clearance certificate before you can conclude that transaction. So I hope that helps. And all success to you, Mark. David Manza will tackle maybe David and one more question. It's now 4 minutes to 8.
Extra 15.
Because?
We have a lot more questions.
Well, let's see.
Okay.
Let's see. What David Manza says, what is the procedure of acquiring a huge tract of land in Kenya for ranch purpose? Let me say 10,000 acres. Mark Manza, the procedure is exactly the same as if you were acquiring a 50 by 100. Okay, size has no import on the process. Perhaps it'll take your surveyor longer to survey 10,000 acres to confirm the shape, the boundaries, and the acreage than it would a 50 by 100, but everything else is exactly the same. Okay, now if you're referring to land that is not yet titled, that is going through adjudication, which I covered before, then that's a completely different situation. Please go back and listen to that live event when we talked about adjudication, what the procedure is supposed to be, and more importantly, get the advice and the counsel of a licensed advocate, because it's a highly technical and extremely risky thing to do, to engage in the purchase of land before titles exist, because it's still going through adjudication. So get proper counsel and make an informed decision. Okay. Fancy.chipo. Awesome handle. I like that one. Fancy.chipo on Instagram. Your question is Imbuko soil good for farming? Absolutely, 100%. It's virgin land, never been farmed. You know, I often tell people it's rich with nutrients from dinosaur poop because it's never been farmed. It's exactly the way it's been since God created the good earth. And so it's very rich. We know this also factually because some of our customers have actually done soil tests with crop nutrition, who are the preeminent sort of consultants on soil fertility testing, and the report was glowing, super fertile, can grow anything as long as you have water sufficient for what you want to grow. So yes. The soil in Imbuko is awesome for farming. In fact, some of our neighbors, a neighbor directly behind us is using drip irrigation to grow maize. Beautiful maize plantation. Gladys, I don't know if you happen to have any of the photos we took while we were on site that day of the maize plantation. They're growing beans. What else were they growing? They're doing hay. At some point, they used to grow red chili peppers and bell peppers. A whole bunch of it. They have cows on the land. Obviously, you need sufficient water for that sort of exercise, but the soil is extremely fertile. It's really good for tomato farming. We have some neighbors doing tomato farming and watermelon farming, and that area is particularly famous for onion farming. So if you're keen to see that for yourself, reach out, book a site visit before we are sold out. I think as of today, we only have 14 parcels left in Imbuko 5. Out of 45 parcels, we only have 14 remaining. Book your site visit, come check it out for yourself, and make an informed decision. Okay. Next question. It's now 8. I'll, with your permission, I'll go over by another 5 minutes, not 15. Even though we have a ton of questions. Why? Because we like to respect your time. It's supposed to be an hour, but we'll give another 5 minutes for your most pressing questions. So send them in if you have any. Bet Dominique, please comment on stamp duty and property transfer, especially on properties within Nairobi. Thank you, Bet. Properties within Nairobi predominantly tend to be leasehold property, which is subject to 4% stamp duty, which is a property tax for the transfer of ownership from one party to the other. Anytime you're transferring ownership from one party to the other, unless the transferee is also the transferor, how would that happen? I, as Solomon Wangwe, could opt to transfer the ownership of my property to a company that I own. Okay, because I prefer to have ownership through a company for all tax efficiency, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if I'm setting up a trust, for instance, I want to transfer my personally registered property to an entity. That is how I can transfer from myself to myself through a different entity. If I can prove 100% ownership of that entity that is a transferee, when I am the transferor, then it would be exempted from stamp duty. In most cases, I don't have to pay tax for transfer of ownership from myself to myself, even if the transferee is an entity. I hope that makes sense. But in every other instance, you have to pay property transfer tax, which is called stamp duty. In Nairobi, because most property in Nairobi is leasehold, it's going to be assessed at 4% of the value, of the determined value. Who determines the value? The government valuer at the Ministry of Lands, where you go to submit your documents for transfer. Recently, they adopted a number of approved professional licensed land valuers to supplement government valuers, because government valuers were overwhelmed by all the work. There weren't enough of them, and valuations were simply taking too long to do and delaying transactions. Billions of shillings of real estate transactions were stalled at Ardhi House because of this problem. So the government took an innovative approach and licensed or approved or registered professional valuers who could be used to supplement the service of the government valuers in determining the valuation, so that your percentage at 4% is clear. Okay, and as far as that's concerned, you never want to take shortcuts. One of the things we have consistently done ourselves as Grand Acres and Goshen Acquisitions, when we submit our documents, we also, in most cases, will present copies of the sale agreement, which declares transparently what the value of the transaction is, because that's the most material thing. If you're selling for market value, let your sale agreement affirm that, provide it to the officers, be transparent about it. Also, when you're getting land board approvals, if it's a agricultural piece of land, we always declare the actual sale agreement value on the application form, so that it's also clear to them and there's consistency between the two documents, and it makes the process a lot smoother. You have less resistance as far as what the value ought to be. Obviously, 4% of X is different from 4% of Z if the assessment is higher than the actual transaction value. But it does help. So always be transparent, never lie with government documents, tell the truth, don't under-declare, because first of all, it's dishonest, it's immoral, and secondly, you could get into trouble for that if they do catch up with you. So I hope that helps and clears your question, Bet. Next, we'll do one more question from Naomi Kamau. it's evil for county governments to charge rates on agricultural land. Where is the valuation role for such areas? Well, Naomi, it does rub me the wrong way. Obviously, if I'm dealing with freehold agricultural land, in many cases, a lot of investors, especially speculative or long-term investors, will look specifically for freehold agricultural land. Why? Because they don't want to worry about accruing taxes on an annual basis. They want absolute ownership for perpetuity until it makes sense to resell. If they want to pass it on to a child or a grandchild or whatever, you know. So when counties therefore decide that, yeah, it's freehold agricultural, but you're still going to pay rates, it rubs me the wrong way. And technically speaking, it's not supposed to be done, but the county governments are getting away with it. I've actually inquired with some advocates about why that is possible, and no one can give a clear answer, except that no one has challenged the counties. And this is why sometimes we need activist advocates, such as the famous now Senator Okia Omtata, who has taken up such causes for many years. Privately in the office, we've been praying that he does so around this issue of charging rates on agricultural land. But you know, it is happening. And unless you pay, you don't get clearance certificates. Therefore, the registrar cannot proceed with the registration of ownership or whatever the case may be, right? So we're held hostage to that situation. Where is the valuation role for such areas? That is generally at the local registry, where the valuer station would have a fairly good idea what the value of land is in particular corners of that area, because they have a lot of data on this. And even when they're in doubt, they will make a point of visiting the site themselves to determine its value. So the valuation role is going to be localized, and the valuer at the local registry, where you're having to deal with the Ministry of Lands, will contain that role. Okay, Naomi, thank you for your question. I hope that helps. If you have any other pressing questions that I haven't been able to get to, please forgive. You know, we don't have too much time for this session. We've always debated about making them longer. Would people be okay, you know, participating longer or not? Send your feedback. We're happy to take feedback and respond to you guys, because the reason we do this is for you. It's not for us, and we're happy to help. So if you have a super pressing question, maybe we didn't get a chance to get to, please send them through to our WhatsApp, along as whatever you've posted on the socials. Our WhatsApp number is 07 0001 0001. Again, that's 07 0001 0001. And I promise you, I'll make a point of getting back to you with an answer to that. And share, subscribe, check out our links, a ton of good information on our YouTube channel, Own Land in Kenya, or you can just search for Goshen Acquisitions on YouTube. You'll get a ton of content that we've done since 2016 on all sorts of issues around land investment, property investment in Kenya. And download our free copy of the Grand Acres Checklist, the 9 steps to safe land ownership in Kenya. And we'll be happy to engage with you further. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a blessed evening.
Welcome to Imbuko 5. Tuko So Imbuko, karibuni sana. It's mid-morning. Yeah, it's 9:54 a.m. in this beautiful corner of South Kajiado. As you can tell, we've had a few dumpings of rain. You can tell from the muddy puddles on the side of this Maram road. Although I have been told that for whatever reason, this side of Kajiado South has only started receiving rainfall, whereas the side closer to Emali has received a lot more rainfall. And you can tell as you drive down because it's a lot greener on that side. But we thank God at least they've gotten a few sprinkles here and there, and hopefully it increases before the rainy season is over. But the reason I'm excited to show you where we're at is because Imbuko returned. So we're standing right on the side of the access road that runs along what will be Imbuko 5, which will be 1 acre parcels of land that we're going to be offering on a pre-sale basis, because 50 acres as a mother parcel is relatively small, because after accounting for access roads in any public utility size like for the garden, we may have only 45 1 acre parcels to sell to you. So I just want to give you guys a sneak peek of what Imbuko 5 looks like before we do any of the maraming of the access roads and so on. It's very close to Imbuko 4. As you recall, 5 acre blocks which sold out really quick, which also sold right after Imbuko 3, which were 1 acre parcels. If you're interested, reach out to us ASAP 0700010001. Again, that's 0700010001. Someone on WhatsApp can respond to you. You can also check out our website, send us an email, and we'll be happy to engage with you as soon as possible.
Get your 1 acre lot at only 1.19 million today.